I was 10 when the world I knew crumbled, like the red clay cliffs near our home in Shiloh, Georgia, after a hard rain. The summer of 1957 hung heavy with heat, the kind that made your skin stick to the porch swing and the air smell of pine and dust. Our little house, with its peeling white paint and sagging roof, stood at the edge of a cotton field, where the stalks bowed under the weight of their own bolls. I used to run through those fields, my bare feet kicking up earth, chasing my brother Paul and sister Rosie, their laughter trailing like fireflies. Mama would call us in for supper, her voice warm as the cornbread she baked. That was before the pneumonia took her, before the shadows crept into our home, before I learned that monsters don't always hide under beds. I'm Eleanor Rose Thompson now, 78 years old, with hands that knead dough for pies and a heart that's carried more than its share of scars. Folks in Fairview call me Grandma Ellie, the lady with the Sunday hymns and the blueberry jam. But back then, I was just Ellie, a skinny girl with braids and a smile that didn't yet know how to hide pain. I tell this story not to dwell on the darkness but to shine a light for those still finding their way out. It's a story of loss, of betrayal, of a silence that nearly broke me, and of the grace that stitched me back together. Mama's death came quick, like a storm that splits an oak. One week she was singing Amazing Grace while shelling peas, her brown eyes crinkling at the corners. The next, she was gone, her breath stolen by a fever that no doctor in Shiloh could tame. I remember the funeral, the church packed with folks in their Sunday best, the air thick with lilies and grief. Daddy stood by her coffin, his calloused hands trembling, his face carved with a sorrow I didn't yet understand. Paul, 12, and Rosie, 7, clung to me, their tears soaking my dress. I wanted to cry, too, but something in me hardened, like the earth under August sun. I had to be strong for them. I didn't know then that strength could be a cage. Daddy tried to keep us afloat. He was a mechanic, his hands always stained with grease, his laugh a rare gift that could light up a room. But after Mama, that laugh went quiet. He worked longer hours at the garage, coming home with eyes that looked past us. The house felt empty without Mama's humming, her stories, her way of making even boiled greens taste like love. I took to cooking, burning biscuits at first, but learning fast. I braided Rosie's hair, mended Paul's shirts, and told them bedtime stories about talking rabbits, like Mama used to. I was 10, but I felt older, as if grief had stretched time. Then Grandpa August came. Daddy's father, a widower after Grandma's heart attack, moved in that fall. He was a tall man, with a voice like gravel and eyes that seemed to see too much. In Shiloh, he was respected, a deacon at First Baptist, always quick with a Bible verse or a handshake. Folks said he was a blessing, stepping in to help his son's broken family. I wanted to believe it. He brought a suitcase and a wooden cross he hung above the mantel, promising to set things right. At first, he seemed kind, slipping me peppermints, telling stories of his youth. But there was something in his gaze, a hunger I couldn't name, that made my stomach twist. The first time it happened was a November night, the air sharp with frost. Daddy was at the garage, working late. Paul and Rosie were asleep, their breaths soft in the next room. I was washing dishes, the kitchen lit by a single bulb. Grandpa August stood behind me, too close, his hand brushing my shoulder. "You're growing up fast, Ellie," he said, his voice low, like a secret. I froze, the dishcloth dripping in my hands. What followed is a memory I've spent decades trying to bury, a violation that left me hollow, my body no longer my own. He told me to be quiet, that no one would believe me, that I'd ruin the family if I spoke. I was 10, and I believed him. That winter, I learned to live in fragments. I smiled for Rosie, helped Paul with his arithmetic, sat through church with Grandpa's hand heavy on my shoulder. But inside, I was unraveling. The cotton fields, once my playground, felt like a trap, their endless rows mirroring the walls closing in. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, praying to Mama's God for rescue. Yet the God I knew from Sunday school seemed distant, his silence louder than my own. By spring, I was a ghost in my own skin, moving through chores, school, life, with a weight no child should carry. I'd catch Daddy's eye sometimes, see the question in his frown, but I'd look away. How could I tell him? How could I break his heart again? So I stayed silent, my secret a stone in my chest, while Shiloh bloomed around me, oblivious to the darkness in our little house. The spring of 1958 in Shiloh was a riot of color, dogwoods bursting pink and white against the red Georgia clay, mocking the grayness inside me. I was 11 now, but the girl who'd chased fireflies was gone, replaced by someone who moved carefully, like a deer sensing a hunter. Our house, once a haven, felt like a stage where I played a role: dutiful daughter, big sister, keeper of a secret that burned like lye. The cotton fields stretched beyond our porch, their green tips swaying in the breeze, but I no longer ran through them. They reminded me of Grandpa August's shadow, always lurking, always waiting. I'm Ellie Thompson, 78 now, looking back with eyes that have seen both despair and dawn. Folks in Fairview know me for my pies and my prayers, but they don't see the scars I carry, the ones that taught me how to fight for light. This part of my story is about the cracks, how they formed, how they nearly broke us, and how they let the first slivers of hope slip through. Grandpa August's presence was a poison, slow and insidious. He was a fixture in Shiloh, his deacon's smile fooling everyone. At church, he'd quote psalms, his voice booming, while I sat rigid in the pew, his hand grazing my knee under the hymn book. Folks would pat my head, saying how lucky we were to have him. I wanted to scream, to tear the cross from the mantle and shatter it, but fear kept me mute. He'd warned me, one word, and I'd destroy Daddy, Paul, Rosie. I believed him, because what 11-year-old wouldn't? My world was already fractured, I couldn't risk it crumbling entirely. Daddy was slipping away, too. Grief had hollowed him, and the garage consumed his days. He'd come home late, grease-stained and quiet, his eyes searching mine like he sensed something wrong but didn't know how to ask. "You okay, Ellie girl?" he'd say, ruffling my hair. I'd nod, forcing a smile, the lie bitter on my tongue. I wanted to tell him, to crawl into his lap like I did when I was little, but the words stayed trapped. What if he didn't believe me? What if he blamed me? So I cooked supper, scrubbed floors, and kept the house running, my silence a shield for the family I had left. Paul and Rosie were my anchors, though they didn't know it. Paul, 13 now, was all elbows and attitude, sneaking cigarettes behind the barn and talking about joining the army someday. Rosie, 8, was softer, her wide eyes still trusting the world. I'd braid her hair each morning, my fingers steady even when my heart wasn't, and tell her stories to keep her smiling. "Ellie, why don't you play no more?" she asked one day, her voice small as we shelled peas on the porch. I froze, the pea pod splitting in my hand. "Just busy, Rosie," I said, hating how easily the lie came. She didn't push, but her frown lingered, a mirror of my own guilt. School was my escape, a one-room building where Miss Clara taught us reading and sums. I'd lose myself in books, in stories of far-off places where girls weren't afraid. But even there, the weight followed. I'd flinch when boys roughhoused near me, my body remembering what my mind tried to forget. Miss Clara noticed, pulling me aside one day. "You're quiet lately, Ellie. Everything all right at home?" Her eyes were kind, but I shook my head, muttering something about Mama. She didn't press, but her gaze stayed with me, a reminder that someone saw me, even if I couldn't speak. The abuse continued, each incident carving deeper into my soul. It was always when Daddy was gone, Paul at the creek, Rosie napping. Grandpa August's voice would turn soft, his hands hard, and I'd retreat somewhere inside myself, a place where I could pretend I was still whole. Afterward, I'd scrub my skin raw in the creek, the cold water stinging but never cleansing. I prayed, too, kneeling by my bed, begging God to make it stop. But the heavens stayed silent, and I began to wonder if I deserved this, if my silence was a sin. Then, one humid June evening, the cracks widened. Daddy came home early, his boots heavy on the porch. I was at the stove, stirring beans, when I heard the door slam. Grandpa August was in the parlor, his Bible open, but his eyes were on me, sharp as a blade. Daddy paused in the doorway, his face tight. "Ellie, you look tired," he said, his voice rough. Ain't you been sleeping? I mumbled something, my heart pounding. He glanced at Grandpa, then back at me, and for a moment, I thought he'd say more. But he just sighed, grabbed a beer, and sank into his chair. I wanted to run to him, to spill everything, but Grandpa's shadow loomed, and I stayed silent. That night, I lay awake, the crickets sung a restless pulse. Rosie's soft snores filled the room, but sleep wouldn't come. I thought of Mama, her gentle hands, her faith that God never left us. I wanted to believe her, but all I felt was alone. Yet something shifted in me, a spark of defiance. I couldn't keep living like this, a ghost in my own life. I didn't know how, but I had to find a way out, for me, for Paul, for Rosie. The cracks were spreading, and I was starting to see that they might lead somewhere new. The summer of 1958 in Shiloh was relentless, the air thick with humidity that clung to your skin like a second sorrow. The cotton fields shimmered under a merciless sun, their rows stretching toward a horizon that felt forever out of reach. Our house, with its warped boards and chipped paint, stood like a weary sentinel, holding secrets it could no longer contain. I was 11, but my eyes carried the weight of someone much older, my childhood stolen by a darkness I couldn't name aloud. Each day was a tightrope walk, balancing the pretense of normalcy with the terror that lived in my bones. I'm Ellie Thompson, 78 now, my hands worn from years of kneading dough and wiping tears, mine and others. In Fairview, they call me Grandma Ellie, the woman who sings hymns and shares stories. But back then, I was a girl teetering on the edge, my heart a battlefield of fear and faint hope. This part of my story is about the moment everything shattered, when silence broke and truth clawed its way out, changing us forever. Grandpa August's grip on our home tightened as summer deepened. His presence was a storm cloud, his deacon's smile a mask that fooled everyone but me. At church, he'd preach about sin, his voice rolling like thunder, while I sat in the pew, my hands knotted, his touch a ghost on my skin. Neighbors brought him casseroles, praising his sacrifice for poor Ernest's kids. I wanted to scream, to expose the monster behind the cross he wore, but his threats echoed, one word, and I'd destroy my family. So I stayed silent, my secret a blade twisting deeper each time he cornered me. Daddy was unraveling, his grief for Mama now tangled with something new, suspicion. He'd watch me sometimes, his brow furrowed, like he sensed the wrongness but couldn't pin it down. Ellie, you'd tell me if something was off, right? He asked one evening, his voice rough with worry. I nodded, my throat tight, the lie burning. I wanted to confess, to let him carry the weight, but fear stopped me. What if he confronted Grandpa and it tore us apart? What if he didn't believe me? So I kept cooking, kept smiling, kept the house from falling apart, even as I crumbled inside. Paul and Rosie were my lifeline, their innocence a fragile light. Paul, now 13, was restless, sneaking off to fish or smoke, his defiance a shield against our fractured home. Rosie, 8, still clung to me, her questions sharper now. Ellie, why's Grandpa always watching you? She asked one day, her voice small as we hung laundry. My heart stuttered, but I forced a laugh. He's just old and nosy, Rosie. She didn't look convinced, and I hated how my lies were building walls between us. School was over for the summer, leaving me trapped at home, the hours stretching like the fields outside. I'd escape to the creek when I could, its cool water a fleeting relief, though it never washed away the shame. I prayed there, too, my whispers lost in the current, begging God for a way out. Mama's faith had been a warm blanket, mine was a fraying thread, but I held on, hoping for a miracle. The breaking point came on a sweltering August night, the air heavy with the threat of rain. Daddy was home early, a rare occurrence, his boots scuffing the porch as he lit a cigarette. I was in the kitchen, scrubbing pots, my hands raw from work and nerves. Grandpa August was in the parlor, his Bible open, but his eyes followed me, predatory and bold. Paul was at a friend's, Rosie asleep upstairs. The house felt too small, the walls closing in. I heard Daddy's chair creak, then his voice, sharp. August, you been actin' strange lately. My hands froze in the soapy water, my pulse a drumbeat. Grandpa chuckled, low and dismissive. Just keepin' an eye on things, Ernest. You're gone so much. The air shifted, charged like before a storm. I wanted to run, to hide, but my feet were rooted. Then it happened. Daddy stood, crossing to the parlor, his shadow looming. I don't know what he saw, maybe the way Grandpa's gaze lingered, maybe something in my face, but his voice turned to steel. Ellie, come here. I obeyed, trembling, the dishcloth dripping in my hand. He looked at me, then at Grandpa, and something clicked. What's going on here? He demanded, his eyes boring into August. Grandpa stood, his smile gone, his voice cold. Nothing but a girl helpin' her family. But Daddy wasn't listening. He grabbed Grandpa's collar, his face a mask of rage. You touch her? The question hung, a blade ready to fall. I wanted to speak, to confirm, but fear choked me. Then Grandpa laughed, a sound that cut, and Daddy snapped. What followed was chaos, fists, shouts, the crash of a lamp. I screamed, Rosie woke, her cries piercing the night. Daddy and Grandpa grappled, a table splintering under their weight. Then a sickening crack, Grandpa's head hit the hearth, and he went still. Blood pooled, dark against the floorboards. Daddy froze, his breath ragged, his hands shaking. I stood, numb, as Rosie clung to me, sobbing. Daddy turned to me, his eyes wild with grief and guilt. Ellie, did he? I nodded, the truth spilling at last, a flood I couldn't stop. He pulled me close, his arms a fortress, and for the first time in months, I felt safe. I'm sorry, he whispered, over and over, as thunder rumbled outside. The storm had broken, and so had we, but in that wreckage, I glimpsed something new, a chance to rebuild. The rain came hard that August night in 1958, pounding the roof of our Shiloh home like a judgment. Inside, the air was thick with the coppery smell of blood and the weight of what had just happened. Grandpa August lay motionless on the parlor floor, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling, the hearth stained dark. The cross he'd hung above the mantel loomed over us, a silent witness to the chaos. I was 11, my heart a tangle of relief and terror, my body still trembling from the truth I'd finally let spill. Daddy stood over me, his arms around Rosie and me, his breath ragged as the storm outside. We were free, but freedom came with a cost I couldn't yet measure. I'm Ellie Thompson, 78 now, my life a patchwork of pain and purpose. In Fairview, they know me as Grandma Ellie, the woman who bakes pies and prays with conviction. But back then, I was a girl staring into the wreckage of my family, wondering if we could ever be whole again. This part of my story is about the aftermath, how we buried the truth, how we carried the scars, and how I began to find my voice. Daddy moved first, his voice low and steady, like he was talking himself through a repair at the garage. Ellie, Rosie, go to your room, he said, his eyes avoiding the body on the floor. Rosie clung to me, her sobs muffled against my dress, but I hesitated. Daddy, what's gonna happen? I whispered, my voice barely audible over the rain. He knelt, his hands on my shoulders, his face etched with a grief I'd never seen. I'm gonna fix this, Ellie girl. You trust me? I nodded, though fear gnawed at me. I took Rosie upstairs, her small hand in mine, and tucked her into bed, humming a lullaby to drown out her questions. Downstairs, Daddy worked fast. I heard the scrape of furniture, the rustle of a tarp. Peeking through the floorboards, I saw him wrap Grandpa August's body, his movements mechanical, his face set. He dragged the bundle outside, the rain swallowing the sound. I didn't know where he took him, but when he came back, soaked and silent, he sat at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. I crept down, unable to stay away. Daddy? He looked up, his eyes red. It's done, Ellie. Ain't nobody gotta know. I understood then, we were bound by a new secret, one meant to protect us but heavy all the same. The next morning, Daddy told the sheriff Grandpa August had fallen, hit his head, a tragic accident. Shiloh believed it, why wouldn't they? August was old, the house cluttered. The coroner didn't look too hard, and the funeral was quick, the church half empty. Folks whispered about Daddy's grief, losing his wife and now his father, but they didn't see the truth in his clenched jaw or my averted eyes. Paul, back from his friends, sensed something, his questions sharp. "What happened, Ellie? Why's Daddy so quiet?" I shrugged, my throat tight. "Just an accident, Paul." He didn't push, but his silence felt like doubt. Life limped on. Daddy cleaned the parlor, scrubbing the hearth until his knuckles bled. I cooked, tended to Rosie, tried to act normal, but normal was a ghost. Nightmares came, vivid and cruel, Grandpa's hands, his voice, the crack of his skull. I'd wake gasping, Rosie stirring beside me. I stopped praying, my faith bruised by a God who'd let this happen. Yet I felt lighter, too, the absence of August's shadow a strange relief. I could breathe again, though each breath carried guilt, for what I'd endured, for what Daddy had done, for the lie we lived. Daddy changed, too. He stayed home more, his hands gentle when he hugged us, his eyes searching mine for forgiveness. "I should have seen it, Ellie," he said one night, his voice breaking. "I failed you." I shook my head, tears falling. "You saved me, Daddy." We didn't speak of it again, but his love became fierce, a shield against the world. He took us fishing, told stories, tried to fill the hole Mama left. It wasn't enough, but it was something. School started, and I threw myself into it, hungry for a place where I wasn't the girl with secrets. Miss Clara noticed my focus, praising my essays, slipping me books. "You've got a gift, Ellie," she said, her smile warm. I clung to that, to the idea I could be more than my pain. But the weight lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake. I'd flinch at loud voices, avoid men's gazes, my body still braced for harm. Then came Aunt Louise's letter. Daddy's sister, living in Fairview, invited us to visit. "A fresh start," Daddy said, his voice hopeful. I didn't know if I believed in fresh starts, but the idea of leaving Shiloh, with its haunted fields and prying eyes, sparked something in me. As we packed, I looked at the cotton fields one last time, their bowls bursting white under the September sun. They'd witnessed my silence, my survival. Now, they'd watch me go. In Fairview, I'd find a new beginning, but that August night stayed with me, a scar that would shape every step. I was still broken, but I was alive, and that was enough to keep moving forward. The road to Fairview in September 1958 was a ribbon of red dirt and possibility, winding through Georgia's hills where the pines stood tall and the air smelled of freedom. Our old truck rattled along, packed with suitcases and the weight of what we'd left behind in Shiloh. I was 11, my heart a bruised thing, but the sight of those hills, their slopes dappled with early autumn gold, stirred something in me, a flicker of hope, fragile as a moth's wing. Daddy drove, his hand steady on the wheel, while Paul fiddled with the radio and Rosie pressed her nose to the window, counting cows. We were running from a ghost, but maybe, just maybe, we were running towards something better. I'm Ellie Thompson, 78 now, my life a testament to the stubbornness of survival. In Fairview, they call me Grandma Ellie, the woman who bakes for the church and listens to troubled hearts. But back then, I was a girl stepping into a new world, carrying secrets and scars, learning that healing begins with a single brave step. This part of my story is about finding refuge, about the first cracks of light through my darkness, and about the woman who helped me speak. Fairview was different from Shiloh, smaller, greener, with clapboard houses nestled among oaks and a main street where folks waved like they meant it. Aunt Louise's house was a two-story with a wide porch, its paint fresh and its garden bursting with zinnias. She greeted us with hugs that smelled of lavender and biscuits, her eyes sharp but kind. "Y'all look like you need some feeding up," she said, her voice a warm drawl. Daddy managed a smile, but I saw the strain in his jaw, the guilt he carried for what happened in Shiloh. I wondered if Louise saw it, too. We settled in, Paul and Rosie sharing a room upstairs, me in a small attic space with a slanted ceiling and a window overlooking the garden. I loved that window, the way it framed the world in soft light, the way it let me breathe. Louise kept us busy, Paul helped with chores, Rosie trailed her in the kitchen, and I dove into school, a brick building with creaky floors and a library that smelled of old paper. I was hungry for normalcy, for a place where my name didn't carry whispers of tragedy. but the past clung to me. Nightmares woke me, images of Grandpa August's hands, the crack of his skull, Daddy's desperate eyes. I'd sit by my window, staring at the stars, wondering if Mama could see me. My prayers were halting, my faith a bruised reed, but I whispered to her anyway, asking for strength. During the day, I was Ellie the good student, the big sister, the girl who smiled. But inside, I was still splintered, my silence a habit I didn't know how to break. Louise noticed. She had a way of seeing without prying, her questions gentle but pointed. "You're awful quiet, Ellie," she said one afternoon, kneading dough while I peeled apples. "Anything you want to share?" I shook my head, my knife slipping, nicking my finger. She bandaged it, her touch steady, and didn't push. But her presence was a balm, her laughter a reminder that joy could exist alongside pain. School became my sanctuary. My teacher, Miss Evelyn, was young, with a voice like a song and a knack for making history feel alive. I soaked up her lessons, my hand flying across pages, my essays earning her praise. "You've got a mind for stories, Ellie," she said, handing back a paper marked with a red A. I clung to that, to the idea I could create something good, something mine. But I still flinched at sudden noises, still scanned rooms for threats, my body remembering what my mind tried to forget. Then, one crisp October evening, everything shifted. Louise and I were on the porch, shelling pecans, the air cool and fragrant with fallen leaves. Daddy was at his new job at a Fairview garage, Paul and Rosie playing in the yard. The quiet felt safe, and maybe that's why I spoke. "Aunt Louise," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "something bad happened in Shiloh." She set her bowl down, her eyes locking on mine, not with judgment but with a fierce, quiet strength. "Tell me, child." The words came slow, halting, each one a stone lifted from my chest. I told her about Grandpa August, the abuse, the fear, the night he died. I told her about Daddy's rage, the tarp, the lie we lived. Tears fell, hot and endless, but Louise didn't flinch. She pulled me close, her arms a fortress, and whispered, "You're safe now, Ellie. And you're not alone." For the first time, I believed it. That night, I slept without nightmares, the stars outside my window brighter than before. Louise didn't tell Daddy I'd spoken, but she watched us closer, her love a steady anchor. I wasn't healed, not yet, but I'd taken a step, my voice a small, brave thing. Fairview was becoming home, and in its embrace, I began to imagine a future where I could be whole. The fall of 1958 in Fairview wrapped me in a gentle embrace, its air crisp with the scent of wood smoke and apples, its hills ablaze with reds and golds that seemed to promise renewal. I was 12 now, living in Aunt Louise's house, where the porch creaked under the weight of new memories. The nightmares still came, shadows of Shiloh's horrors, but they were softer, less frequent, as if my confession to Louise had loosened their grip. I was learning to breathe again, to let the world in, though my heart still carried cracks that ached with every beat. I'm Ellie Thompson, 78 now, my life a mosaic of survival and grace. In Fairview, they know me as Grandma Ellie, the woman who shares pies and prayers, but back then, I was a girl finding her footing, planting seeds of strength in soil scarred by trauma. This part of my story is about growth, how I began to reclaim myself through school, faith, and the quiet power of community, and how I learned that healing is a slow, stubborn bloom. Louise's home was a haven, its rhythm steadying me. Mornings meant coffee brewing, Louise humming hymns, and Rosie's chatter filling the kitchen. Paul, 14, was settling in, his restlessness channeled into fixing bikes and dreaming of cars. Daddy worked long hours at the garage, but he was home for supper, his smiles more frequent, his hugs fierce. "You're doing good, Ellie girl," he'd say, his eyes searching mine for the pain he knew lingered. I'd nod, grateful for his love, though we never spoke of Shiloh or the secret that bound us. Some truths, I learned, are carried in silence. School was my lifeline, a place where I could be more than my past. Miss Evelyn's classroom, with its maps and books, was a world I could control. I threw myself into learning, my essays, and some's a way to prove I was still here, still fighting. "You've got a spark, Ellie," Miss Evelyn said one day, handing me a worn copy of Little Women. Joe marched. Be proud of you. I devoured the book, Joe's defiance mirroring the fire growing in me. But I still startled at loud voices, still scanned crowds for threats, my body a map of memories I couldn't erase. Louise watched me closely, her love a steady current. She didn't push me to talk more about Shiloh, but she created space for it, her questions gentle. "You sleepin' okay, Ellie?" she'd ask, pouring tea. I'd shrug, but her presence coaxed out small truths, a bad dream, a fear of being alone. She'd listen, her hands busy with sewing or cooking, her silence an invitation. One Sunday, she took me to her church, a small clapboard building where the congregation sang with a joy that felt foreign but warm. I didn't pray, not yet, but the music stirred something in me, a memory of Mama's faith. That winter, I turned 12, and Louise baked a cake, its icing sloppy but sweet. Daddy gave me a journal, its leather cover soft under my fingers. "Write what you feel, Ellie," he said, his voice rough. "Don't let it stay inside." I started writing that night, my words jagged and raw, anger at Grandpa August, grief for Mama, guilt for Daddy's pain. The pages became my confessor, holding truths I wasn't ready to speak. Each word was a step, a way to name the hurt and let it breathe. Paul and Rosie were changing, too. Paul, taller now, was less angry, his dreams of the army replaced by talk of engines. He'd tease me, calling me Professor Ellie, but his grin was proud. Rosie, 9, was my shadow, her questions softer but no less piercing. "Ellie, you think Mama's watchin' us?" she asked one night, her head on my shoulder. I hesitated, my faith still fragile, but I said, "Yeah, Rosie. She's our angel." Her smile was a gift, a reminder of why I kept going. A new friend, Sarah, entered my life that spring. A classmate with freckles and a laugh like bells, she sat with me at lunch, sharing her sandwiches and stories. "You're quiet, but I like you," she said, her honesty disarming. With Sarah, I could be a girl again, giggling over jump rope or braiding her hair. She didn't know my past, and that was a mercy, a chance to be Ellie, not the girl from Shiloh. By summer, I was stronger, though the scars remained. I joined the church choir, my voice shaky at first but growing bold. Singing felt like praying, a way to reach for the God I doubted. One evening, Louise found me writing in my journal, tears on my cheeks. "You're gonna be all right, Ellie," she said, her hand on mine. "You're stronger than you know." I wanted to believe her, and for the first time, I did. Fairview was teaching me that healing wasn't a destination but a journey, each step a victory. I wasn't whole, not yet, but I was growing, my roots reaching deeper into this new soil. The girl who'd survived Shiloh was still in me, but she was joined by someone new, someone who could write, sing, and hope, even with a heart that still ached. By the summer of 1959, Fairview had woven itself into my bones, its gentle hills and oak-lined streets a balm to the wounds I carried. I was 13, taller now, my braids replaced by a ponytail that swung as I walked to school or sang in the church choir. The air was thick with honeysuckle and the hum of cicadas, and Louise's garden bloomed with roses that seemed to nod in approval of my slow, stubborn healing. The nightmares still crept in, echoes of Shiloh's darkness, but they were fainter, like shadows fading at dawn. I was learning to carry my past without letting it define me, to trust that I could be more than my pain. I'm Ellie Thompson, 78 now, my hands etched with the lines of a life fully lived. In Fairview, they call me Grandma Ellie, the woman who bakes pies and holds space for other stories. But back then, I was a girl testing new wings, fragile but growing stronger, guided by love and a faith I was rediscovering. This part of my story is about stretching toward light, how I found purpose in learning, strength in community, and a voice that was finally mine. School was my proving ground, a place where I could shine without fear. Miss Evelyn, my teacher, saw my hunger for knowledge and fed it with books and encouragement. "You could be a teacher one day, Ellie," she said, her eyes bright as she handed me Jane Eyre. I devoured it, Jane's resilience mirroring my own, her courage a spark in my chest. I excelled in English and history, my essays earning praise, my hand always raised. But I still flinched at unexpected touches, still scanned rooms for exits, my body a silent keeper of Shiloh scars. Healing, I learned, was not a straight path but a spiral, circling back to pain before moving forward. Louise was my anchor, her steady presence a reminder that I was seen. She'd sit with me on the porch, shelling beans or mending clothes, her silence an invitation to speak. I told her more about Shiloh, not the details, but the way it had hollowed me. "You're not that girl anymore, Ellie," she said one evening, her voice firm. "You're building something new." Her words were a seed, rooting deep, and I began to believe I could be more than my trauma. Daddy was trying, too. His job at the Fairview garage kept him busy, but he was home for supper, his laughter rarer but real. He'd watch me with a mix of pride and guilt, his eyes lingering on the journal he'd given me. "You still writin', Ellie girl?" he'd ask, his voice soft. I'd nod, not ready to share the raw words spilling onto those pages, anger, grief, but also hope. We never spoke of Grandpa August or that night, but his love was a quiet apology, a promise to protect us. Paul, 15, was pulling away, his dreams of engines clashing with Daddy's expectations, but he'd still ruffle my hair, calling me professor. Rosie, 10, was my heart, her drawings and giggles a light I clung to. Church became a refuge, its clapboard walls echoing with hymns that felt like home. I sang in the choir, my voice blending with others, a small act of courage. The pastor, Reverend Thomas, spoke of a God who restores, and though my faith was still fragile, I listened. One Sunday, I stayed after service, my hands twisting as I asked, "Does God forgive everyone?" His eyes were kind but searching. "God's grace is big, Ellie, but it's okay to be angry, too." His words freed something in me, a permission to feel the hurt without shame. That fall, I joined the school's debate club, urged by Sarah, my freckled friend whose laughter was a lifeline. Standing before classmates, arguing about history or literature, I found my voice, shaky at first, then bold. "You're a natural," Sarah said, grinning as we practiced. With her, I could be silly, braiding her hair or chasing fireflies, moments that reminded me I was still a girl, not just a survivor. But the past wasn't done with me. One night, a nightmare hit hard, Grandpa August's face, his hands, the blood on the hearth. I woke sobbing, my journal falling to the floor. Louise heard, her footsteps soft as she sat on my bed. "Tell me, Ellie," she said, her hand on mine. I did, the words tumbling out, fear, guilt, the shame that clung like damp earth. She listened, her silence a sanctuary, then said, "You didn't cause this, child. You survived it." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me from the dark. By spring, I was different, stronger, though not whole. I wrote in my journal daily, my words a bridge between the girl I was and the woman I wanted to be. I dreamed of teaching, of giving other children the hope Miss Evelyn gave me. At church, I prayed again, tentative but earnest, asking Mama's God for guidance. Fairview's hills, blooming with wildflowers, seemed to whisper back, "Keep going." I was learning that strength wasn't the absence of pain but the courage to live through it, to build a life where love could grow. The summer of 1960 in Fairview was a tapestry of warmth and discovery, the air alive with the buzz of bees and the scent of mown grass. I was 14, my limbs longer, my heart steadier, though still threaded with the scars of Shiloh. Louise's porch was my haven, where I'd sit with my journal, writing stories and dreams under the watchful eyes of her roses. The nightmares were rarer now, their edges dulled by time and the love that surrounded me. I was learning to trust the world again, to believe in goodness, even as I braced for its cost. I'm Ellie Thompson, 78 now, my life a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In Fairview, they call me Grandma Ellie, the woman who bakes for potlucks and prays with quiet conviction. But back then, I was a girl stepping into love and purpose, only to face new losses that tested my fragile strength. This part of my story is about the joy of connection, the pain of letting go, and the faith that carried me through. School was my anchor, a place where I could soar. I was in high school now, my classes filled with literature and algebra, my teachers pushing me to dream big. Miss Evelyn, still a mentor, encouraged me to apply for a scholarship to a teacher's college. "You've got a gift, Ellie," she said, her smile bright. "The world needs teachers like you." I clung to that vision, imagining myself in a classroom, helping kids find their own light. But I still carried Shiloh's echoes, flinching at loud voices, avoiding crowds, though I hid it behind good grades and a quick smile. Louise was my rock, her kitchen a place of laughter and lessons. She taught me to bake pies, her hands guiding mine as we rolled dough. "Life's like this crust," she'd say, chuckling. "Takes patience to get it right." I told her more about my fears, my hopes, and she listened, her wisdom a steady current. "You're gonna do great things, Ellie," she said one evening, her eyes soft. Her belief in me was a mirror, reflecting a strength I was starting to see. Daddy was softer now, his grief for Mama tempered by time. He'd take us fishing on weekends, his stories of his youth making Paul laugh and Rosie squeal. But I saw the shadows in his eyes, the guilt over Shiloh he'd never voice. "Proud of you, Ellie girl," he'd say, ruffling my hair. Paul, 16, was working part-time at the garage, his dreams of cars growing clearer. Rosie, 11, was blooming, her drawings pinned to every wall. We were a family, fractured but healing, held together by love. Then I met Anthony. He was 17, a new student with kind eyes and a quiet laugh. His family moved from Atlanta. We met at church, where he played piano, his fingers coaxing hymns to life. "You sing like you mean it," he said after a service, his smile shy. We started talking, about books, music, the stars, and I felt something new, a warmth that scared and thrilled me. With Anthony, I could be Ellie, not the girl from Shiloh. Our walks home became a ritual, his presence a safe harbor. But love, I learned, doesn't shield you from loss. That fall, Daddy got sick, a cough that wouldn't quit, then fevers that left him weak. The doctor said pneumonia, the same thief that took Mama. Louise nursed him, her face tight, while I cooked and kept Rosie steady. "He'll be okay, won't he?" Rosie asked, her eyes wide. I nodded, but fear not at me. Anthony sat with me on the porch, his hand brushing mine. "You're strong, Ellie," he said. "You'll get through this." His words were a lifeline, but I wasn't sure I believed them. By winter, Daddy was gone. His funeral was a blur of hymns and condolences, the church packed with folks who loved him. I stood by his coffin, Rosie clinging to me, Paul's jaw tight. Louise held us close, her tears silent. I wanted to scream, to ask God why he kept taking from me, but I didn't. Instead, I sang at the service, my voice breaking on Amazing Grace, a tribute to Daddy and Mama both. Anthony was there, his presence a quiet strength. Grief was a familiar weight, but this time I wasn't alone. Louise became our guardian, her home our permanent refuge. Paul threw himself into work, Rosie into her art, and I into school and Anthony. He listened as I spoke of Daddy, of Shiloh, his empathy a balm. "You're not your past, Ellie," he said one night, under a sky thick with stars. "You're who you choose to be." I kissed him then, my first, a tentative step toward trust. Church anchored me, too. Reverend Thomas's sermon spoke of redemption, and I prayed again, my faith a flickering flame. I wrote in my journal, pouring out grief and gratitude, my words a bridge to healing. Fairview's hills, dusted with frost, seemed to whisper, "You are enough." I was still scarred, still afraid, but I was also loved, and that love was teaching me to fly. The spring of 1964 in Fairview was a symphony of renewal, the hills lush with green, the air sweet with magnolia blossoms. I was 18, a high school senior, my heart a mosaic of grief and hope, tempered by the love that had carried me through Shiloh's shadows and Daddy's loss. Louise's porch, where I sipped tea and wrote in my journal, was my sanctuary, its creak a reminder of the home we'd built. The nightmares were rare now, faint echoes of a past I was learning to carry rather than be crushed by. I was standing on the cusp of a new life, my dreams of teaching within reach, my heart entwined with Anthony's. I'm Ellie Thompson, 78 now, my life a testament to the power of resilience. In Fairview, they call me Grandma Ellie, the woman who bakes pies and mentors with quiet strength. But back then, I was a young woman forging a path, finding purpose in education and love, and learning that scars could be the foundation of a meaningful life. This part of my story is about building, how I chased my calling, deepened my faith, and faced new challenges with a courage born of survival. High school was my proving ground, and I thrived. With Miss Evelyn's guidance, I'd won a scholarship to a teacher's college in Atlanta, my essays on literature and history earning praise. "You'll change lives, Ellie," she said, her eyes proud. I graduated with honors, my valedictorian speech a tribute to Daddy and Mama, their love the root of my strength. But Shiloh's ghosts lingered, I'd tense at sudden movements, my trust hard-won. Yet I was learning to live beyond fear, to see myself as more than my pain. Louise was my cornerstone, her home a haven of laughter and wisdom. She'd adopted us after Daddy's death, her love fierce and unwavering. "You're ready for the world, Ellie," she said one evening, her hands kneading dough. I hugged her, grateful for the mother she'd become. Paul, now 20, was a mechanic, his grin wide as he fixed cars. Rosie, 15, was an artist, her sketches vivid with dreams. We were a family, scarred but whole, our bond a light in the dark. Anthony was my heart's home. At 20, he was studying to be a doctor, his compassion as steady as his piano playing. We'd walk Fairview's streets, talking of our futures, our hands linked. "I want to marry you someday, Ellie," he said one night, under a sky ablaze with stars. My breath caught, fear and joy colliding. I loved him, but Shiloh had taught me trust was fragile. "Someday," I whispered, kissing him, choosing hope over doubt. He knew my past, his patience a balm, and with him, I felt safe to dream. College was a whirlwind. Atlanta's bustle was daunting, but I threw myself into my studies, my classes on pedagogy and literature igniting my passion. I lived in a dorm, my roommate a chatty girl named Clara who became a friend. I wrote to Anthony and Louise weekly, their letters grounding me. But the weight of Shiloh surfaced sometimes, I'd wake from dreams of Grandpa August, my heart racing. I'd pray then, my faith stronger now, rooted in Mama's God who saw me through. Church in Atlanta, with its soaring choir, reminded me I wasn't alone. By 1967, I was 21, a certified teacher, my first job in a Fairview elementary school. Standing before my third graders, their eyes wide, I felt a purpose that healed. "Miss Thompson, you're the best," a boy named Tommy said, his grin gap-toothed. I poured myself into them, teaching reading and kindness, my classroom a place of safety. But I saw pain in some, bruises, shy glances, and my heart ached. I'd stay late, listening, offering the care I'd needed at their age. Anthony proposed that summer, his ring simple but shining. We married in Fairview's church, Louise beaming, Rosie my maid of honor, Paul joking through tears. "You're my home, Ellie," Anthony said, his vow steady. Our life began in a small apartment, his medical residency demanding but his love constant. I told him more about Shiloh, my words easier now, and he listened, his arms a refuge. "You're my hero," he said, and I began to believe it. But life tested us. In 1970, we faced infertility, a quiet grief that shadowed our joy. I prayed, my faith a lifeline, and leaned on Louise, her wisdom a guide. "God's got a plan, Ellie," she said, her hand on mine. We adopted Charles in 1972, then Mary in 1974, their laughter filling our home. Motherhood was a gift, though it stirred old fears. I'd check on them at night, ensuring their safety. Anthony's steady love anchored me, his belief in me a mirror of my strength. Fairview's hills, blooming with wildflowers, seemed to celebrate my journey. I was a teacher, a wife, a mother, my scars not gone but woven into a life of purpose. I volunteered at church, helping women and children, my story a quiet offering of hope. Healing, I learned, was a lifelong dance, but I was dancing, my steps bolder with each year. The autumn of 1995 in Fairview was a canvas of amber and crimson, the hills alive with the rustle of leaves and the promise of harvest. I was 48, a school principal now, my days filled with the chatter of children and the weight of their futures. Our home, a cozy brick house near Louise's, echoed with Charles and Mary's laughter, though the rooms felt quieter since Anthony's diagnosis. Cancer had crept into our lives, a shadow I couldn't outrun, testing the resilience I'd built since Shiloh. Yet, in Fairview's embrace, I found the strength to face this loss and weave my pain into a legacy of hope. I'm Ellie Thompson, 78 now, my life a testament to the human spirit's capacity to rise. In Fairview, they call me Grandma Ellie, the woman who bakes pies, sings hymns, and carries stories of survival. This final part of my story is about redemption, how I turned my scars into service, found peace and faith, and shared my truth to light the way for others. It's a story of a life not defined by trauma but by the love and purpose that grew from it. Anthony's illness was a slow theft. At 50, he was still the man who'd played piano at our wedding, his eyes kind, his laugh a melody. But chemotherapy drained him, his frame thinning, his hands trembling. "We'll get through this, Ellie," he'd say, his voice steady despite the pain. I clung to his optimism, but fear not at me, memories of Mama and Daddy's losses resurfacing. Charles, 23, and Mary, 21, were home from college, their presence a comfort. Louise, now in her 70s, cooked for us, her prayers a constant hum. I was their rock, but inside, I was crumbling. Teaching anchored me. As principal, I shaped a school where every child felt seen, especially those with hidden hurts. I'd walk the halls, greeting students, my smile a shield against my grief. "Miss Thompson, you're like a mom," a girl named Lila told me, her eyes shy. I hugged her, my heart aching for the girl I'd been. My office became a safe space, where kids shared fears and I offered the empathy I'd craved at 11. My work was a calling, born of Shiloh scars, a way to give what I'd needed. Faith was my refuge. Sundays at church, I sang with the choir, my voice lifting prayers for Anthony, for strength. Reverend Thomas, now graying, spoke of God's presence in suffering, and I believed him. My faith, once fractured, had grown deep, rooted in Mama's hymns and the grace that carried me through. I prayed by Anthony's bedside, my journal filled with gratitude for our life, our children, our love, our shared dreams. Writing was still my release, each word a step toward peace. Anthony passed in November, his hand in mine, a smile on his lips. "You're my hero, Ellie," he whispered, echoing words from our youth. The funeral was packed, Fairview mourning a man who'd healed their bodies and hearts. I spoke, my voice steady, telling stories of his kindness. Charles and Mary clung to me, their grief raw but tempered by love. Louise, Paul, and Rosie, now with families of their own, stood by us, our bond unbroken. I felt Shiloh's weight then, not as pain but as proof I could endure. Grief was familiar, but this time I leaned into it. I volunteered at a women's shelter, sharing my story with survivors, my scars a bridge to their healing. "You're not alone," I'd say, watching their eyes soften. I mentored young teachers, passing on my passion, and baked pies for church, each one a small act of love. Fairview's hills, golden under the autumn sun, seemed to nod, "You've done well." My children thrived, Charles a lawyer, Mary an artist, their lives a testament to the home we'd built. By 2000, I retired, but my work continued. I spoke at community events, my story of abuse, loss, and triumph a beacon for others. "Your pain has purpose," I'd tell audiences, my voice clear. I wrote a memoir, not for fame but to reach those still in darkness, its pages raw with truth and hope. Readers wrote back, their letters a chorus of shared survival, reminding me why I'd spoken. Now, at 78, I'm Grandma Ellie, my porch a gathering place for grandkids and neighbors. I bake, pray, and listen, my life a mosaic of love and loss. Shiloh is a distant memory, its pain softened by the life I've lived. My faith is my anchor, my community my strength. I think of Mama, Daddy, Anthony, their love woven into me, and I smile, knowing I've turned my scars into stars. As I write this, Fairview's hills bloom, a reminder that life persists. I share my story for you, whoever you are, carrying your own weight. You are not your pain. You are the light that grows from it, the strength that carries you forward. Keep going. You're never alone.